guys, welcome back to Strong Successful Male. So for today, I'm going to go over an article that's definitely going to get you talking in the comments section, titled, Death of the Alpha Male as Science Reveals Who Really Holds Power in the Battle of the Sexes. And guys, this article, as the title says, is basically about research that's been done, research that comes from Germany of all places, I don't need to get into that one, where pretty much these researchers, these scientists, had discovered upon their careful studying, of course, not biased at all, that it seems that the alpha male is a bunch of nonsense, and in the wild, particularly studying primates, monkeys, apes, and all that close to the human beings, that, hey, this whole notion of the alpha male is nonsense, and there's more women calling the shots, running the show, all that type of thing. In other words, insinuating that, hey, that happens in the animal kingdom. Well, with regards to human beings, same thing. And in my opinion, this whole thing is a big steaming pile of crap for three big reasons. Number one, it's no secret that over the years, the decades, there's been a big push by the powers that are certainly hell-bent on destabilizing the West to make men out to be toxic, weak, stupid, all these things you see in all the movies and TVs and songs and everything, and have the gals in charge. This is a feminist dream come true. And I find it very interesting the timing of an article like this. Come on here. Two, it's no secret that in order for any scientist or researcher to study something and come up with, something they can write papers on and get their names out there, they need funding. They need grants. Well, who funds that? Who gives them the grants? Well, obviously individuals or groups with wealth. Well, all those groups and individuals certainly are going to have a bias, a political motivation, a way to benefit somehow. So nobody's going to give away anything for free. There's no free lunch. So if you're a young researcher and a scientist and you can get some money, obviously you're going to want to make your benefactor happy. And so I question things like this, always. There was a time and period where doctors were recommending smoking because it was good for you and helped with stress. Well, who benefited from that? Think about that. Or the opioid crisis, the late 90s and 2000s in the United States. Who benefited from that? Even though doctors were pushing it, the FDA said it was okay on the labels. You have to question these things. Now, these are two extreme cases of tobacco and pharmaceuticals as opposed to this particular thing, but this has been a sinister thing behind the scenes. And those of you guys who have been watching me for a while and are aware of these things, you know what I'm talking about. And last but not least, last time I checked, mankind has been observing and paying attention to animals since we came out of the caves, or the Garden of Eden, if you will, when animals turned. And anyhow, to hunt or stay safe. So you're telling me after all this time, and particularly the last couple hundred years when people have really been studying the animals with all the different great equipment and things like that, that all of a sudden now it's all changed at a time period where they're trying to push this narrative? What a load of crap. But anyhow, I'm going to go over this and you guys will see what I'm talking about. So it starts off, says here, the alpha male may be more of a myth than reality, as researchers have found that among many species, he is not the one in charge. Really? Really? A recent study has revealed that female primates won far more power struggles than expected. And in most species, there is no clear male dominance at all. Okay, all of a sudden this is being discovered. Now, I know with elephants, it's a matriarchal society. I think most people know that. But to all of a sudden say with gorillas and apes and other primates close to human beings, and therefore insinuating that us as human beings should let the women run the show? Yeah, how well has that worked out? I remember 10 years ago, I was at a zoo, a very big one, a big, gigantic gorilla enclosure. And you had mama gorilla and baby gorilla playing around and all that, and little baby gorilla's being cute, and everybody's watching through the big glass thing. And out of nowhere comes daddy, the big alpha male gorilla, because all the other betas were kept in a different area. And he comes marching down the hill, he proceeds to get behind mama and starts plowing her right there. Mama didn't fight him. And all the people are watching, mothers are covering their children's eyes, and he's porking his mama. And the little kids rolled around in the dirt and playing. Do you think she was putting up a fight? No. The alpha male. And look at the lions. The male lion sleeps all day, like freaking 19 hours a day, where the women go hunt and take care of the kids. He's protecting the land, the territory, the pride. I can go on and on here. Come on. Anyhow, I had to say that. I read this article this morning and it's like, good Lord. says researchers from Germany, not that their country is in a decline, studied real fights between 151 groups of male and female primates, who are among the most intelligent group of mammals, including humans, monkeys, and apes. They found that in the majority of cases, females push males aside. Tell that to the gorilla I saw in that enclosure 10 years ago. And even controlled the mating process, challenging the long-standing belief that male dominance is the norm. Dr. Elise Hutchard, co-author of the study and evolutionary biologist at the University of Montpellier, told BBC Science, BBC, if a female doesn't want to mate, the male can't do anything about it. That alone gives her power. Well, again, tell that to the female gorilla that I observed that time, as well as probably plenty of other observations in nature. For years, society has depicted the alpha male as the one in charge, leading the group, making decisions, and getting first pick of everything. The imagery has shown up in the movies, on television, and even in school textbooks for decades. I don't know, because it's based on studies going back again since mankind's been observing gorillas and apes and monkeys and all that. But all of a sudden it's different now because the BBC and this chick here, who was obviously being financed by somebody, decides it's so. Interesting timing here. However, it has left out a key fact. Women are already proving they can lead, and not just in isolated cases. In fact, the study authors said that the idea that males are naturally dominant was based more on cultural bias than biology. The research found female power is not rare or an accident. It is part of a broader evolutionary pattern seen across primate societies. Well, let's be honest here. The power they speak of in regards to females, and you could say politicians and governors and vice presidents and leaders and all that, at the end of the day, where does it come from? We all know. You know, there are plenty of sharp women out there, very capable, very successful. I respect that. But at the end of the day, leadership always boils down to the man. That's what people respect. That's what people follow, you know. I'm not saying you can't have gals that are sharp, intelligent, capable, all that. But look at the nuclear family. The male is the leader. When things start going the opposite direction, it's not a very good thing. I know I'm going to get a lot of hate about this from people that may stumble upon this video, but it's the freaking truth. In fact, the study authors said the idea that males are naturally dominant was based on more... I read that part, excuse me. That is a big shift from the narrative of male dominance, especially considering that humans share much of their behavior with primates. Yeah, it is a big shift because I think that's a bunch of nonsense. Researchers collected and analyzed years of detailed behavior, record of primates, and tracked who initiated conflict, who submitted, and who walked away as the winner. The study, published in Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences, looked at 151 groups and found that females came out on top in about 1 of every 8 cases. Males were dominant in about 1 in every 6 cases, representing 25 groups and 16 different primate species. Okay, again, this is based on their research, and you have to question the timing of this and question who's funding all this at a time period when they're trying to destabilize much of the West and the narrative and the norm. And I don't want to say the narrative, but the norm. And not to mention, make men look stupid. You've all noticed in movies and TV the effort to make men look stupid, weak, incompetent, all that. Well, that's not the case, you know? And to make the women look strong and full of leadership and all these things. It's not an accident. And young people watch enough of this, they get brainwashed to think that. I mean, it's been a big push for a long time by the feminist movement, but who's behind that movement and other movements like that? I mean, seriously, I haven't done an article or talked about something like this in a long time. It's high time I do again. It says here, however, in about 70% of these populations, power was more evenly shared, with both males and females able to win conflicts. Well, if they're fighting over some freaking grass or some fruit as opposed to leading the freaking group, scientists said the surprising part was that strength alone did not decide who had the upper hand. In many species, female power came from controlling over mating. Are they trying to say that even with gorillas, that women control the keys to the bedroom? Well, that I can agree with, but at the end of the day, like what I observed at the zoo, and many others have observed studying nature. Now, my zoo experience does not mean set the precedent for everything else. Let me make that clear. But the point is, countless observations have seen what I've seen. In species where females chose when to mate and could not be forced by males, they use that choice as leverage. Researchers said sex gave females a kind of bargaining power. If a male wanted to mate, he had to act right. If he got aggressive, she could turn him down. Well, that does not seem to be the case, but it's interesting that this study is finding this. Hey, look, whether it's human beings or gorillas or chimpanzees, obviously no female should be forced into anything, but we can't control nature in the animal kingdom. A study found female dominance showed up more in species that lived in trees, where males and females are about the same size and where mating tends to be monogamous. Male dominance, on the other hand, was more in common in species that live on the ground, where one male mates with several females and where males are much larger. Okay, so you could be talking about lions, for instance. Fine, but still, I'm calling BS in a lot of this article. In those cases, males often use their size to push females around and fight off other male rivals. But even in species where males are usually in charge, scientists found exceptions. Of course, these scientists found these exceptions. In some groups of the same species, females took the lead. In talapoid monkeys, the dominant sex shifted depending on the environment. Researchers also noticed something often overlooked, that about half of all observed fights between males and females, not just within the same sex. Dr. Dieter Lucas, co-author of the study and researcher at the Max Planck Institute, said, this kind of intersexual aggression, males and females fighting each other, is common, and most studies have ignored it. Well, I'm not going to say males and females aren't going to bicker with each other. I mean, whether it's a bunch of monkeys or human beings. The team looked at 5 major theories to explain why females might end up dominant. The strongest support, they said, went to reproductive control and female competition ideas. Well, again, at the end of the day, they can say the females choose who they're going to mate with, but guess who they usually mate with? The dominant one. And by the way, I got to mention this little intermission here. A lot of people always think with regards to an alpha male. An alpha male, for instance, with human beings, as a overgrown, big-mouth, bullying douchebag, kind of like the high school football jock. And while that certainly is the case a lot of the times, it's not always the case. I've known guys who could be certainly qualify as alpha male that sometimes are short, and they're not very big. They just have a presence. They have a leadership. They have a calmness, a coolness, togetherness. So, and these guys weren't douchebags. They weren't a-holes. But the narrative is that they're these big, overgrown, big-mouth, bullying douchebags. It's not always the case. It says reproductive control means females decide when and how to mate, like bonobo monkeys do, and that shifts the balance of power. In bonobo groups, females mate with several males from alliances and often lead the group. Yeah, well, okay, fine, but that's maybe that particular species, and again, this is the research here. But I have a hard time believing that they're going to mate with the beta males. Moreover, competition among females shows that female power can also come from fighting each other. In species like lemurs and meerkats, females compete over food, territory, or help raise their young, and sometimes even dominate the males. Well, I can believe that the females will fight each other. Some scientists had believed that strong female family ties or coalitions would lead to female dominance, but the data did not really support that. Even when females form close social bonds, they did not always outrank the males. I'm sure that part they just mentioned. Notice they mentioned this part at the end of the article, and it probably just killed the feminist that wanted to hear something better than that. Researchers said that how power plays out in a group depends on a lot of factors like environment, group size, mating system, and even individual personality. That flexibility could apply to humans too. Here we go. This is the whole point of this whole thing, to say, hey, look at the freaking gorillas, look at the monkeys, look at the lemurs. Then with regards to humans, it could be this way too. For instance, chimpanzees are mostly run by males. Bonobos are led by females. That suggests human ancestors might have followed more than one path when it came to gender power. Look, men have been running the show since the beginning of time. And they've had different areas. This isn't Wonder Woman's island. You all know what I'm talking about there. I mean, at the end of the day, look what happened to those groups. A recent database by Leadership Circle showed that female leaders are not only excel at building relationships, but the connections they create are marked by authenticity and a clear sense of how they serve the greater good beyond their immediate circle. Well, again, at the end of the day, there are many, many very, very intelligent women out there in different levels of careers and positions, all that. and have done phenomenal and all that. But at the end of the day, when it comes to, like, say, leadership of a nuclear family, the household, or various things, we know. I don't have to say it. We all know. And what happens is when you have, I've done stories, a couple of different ones, where when you had these all-female companies, well, they were a giant mess. Or the way the women can fight with each other in the workplace over the nonsense. But you got to have more guys, and typically they're to have guys in charge. But anyhow, this video will spread, get a lot of hate towards me, but I'm used to that. But anyhow, this whole thing, in my opinion, is done on purpose. This research, in my opinion, is biased to really insinuate that, hey, it's not what research has shown all these years with regards to the animal kingdom. We want to skew this research to what makes us happy in terms of our political views and how things ought to be with human beings. But just look at the mess that's been going on over all these years. Look right now at the nuclear family in the West that has been decimated. Half the families end up in divorce. Kids are raised by the single moms. And look how well that's worked out. You have these weakling guys that don't know how to be men because they are raised in a household without dad or male presence there. And don't get me wrong, not all single moms are train wrecks. There's a lot of good ones out there, but they don't know what it's like to be a man, okay? And boys need that strong male leader to help, and the daughters need that strong male leader to see what they want to go for, as opposed to the mess that we have now. And I can go on and on with many other examples. But anyhow, guys, there you go. I question all this. Anytime there's research and studies that seem to suddenly be a 180 from how things have been for a long time, because there's usually some kind of bias or gain for some individual funding that. But that's just me. Now, I'm going to read some of the comments. The whole comment section is full of two different type of people. Either it's the people that are kind of saying what I'm saying, what you guys are saying, calling BS on this, or the ones that are insulting guys that actually are questioning this, calling them incels and weak and all that. And I'll read a few just to show you my point. So one guy says here, alpha males, ? Boys these days are indoctrinated to believe they should apologize to everyone for even being male in the first place, as testosterone is apparently toxic. See my point? Another one. I hate to break it to this author, but anyone who knows even a tiny bit of history knows that men have controlled everything for thousands of years. If women really held on that much power, we wouldn't have had to install all kinds of rules to level the playing field for them. Another one. This guy says, LOL. The female may control the mating process, but she's not inviting the weakest males to participate. That is for certain. We need both strong men and women, inside toughness and outside strength. This is a push to control and reduce fighting age men, to make them so insecure and depressed in society that they give up. It's about hate, dominance, and the ability to control the masses. That's not progress, it's deranged thinking. Thank you. That's my point about what's been going on over the years, to weaken men. And you know that whole thing about weak men create hard times and that type of thing? Another one. If you haven't noticed, powerful forces use money and influence to drive social engineering. It took decades, but in the West, the nuclear family is now in the minority and often openly mocked and scorned by the media and our so-called betters. The tea movement was largely funded by two specific billionaires, and there are countless other examples, many more broadly coordinated and planned that you might wish to believe. Whole comment section is full of that, or people trashing people that actually had an opinion on this thing, but you get the point. So there you go, guys. But when I see these things, the red flags go up. I see what's behind this other than just some interesting article about the apes and the lemurs and the chimpanzees and the gorillas. I see what they're doing here. Don't fall for it. It's part of the BS narrative. I think it's desperation at this point because they can see the guys aren't being pushed around anymore. Lord knows that this video, because of my opinion, will be taken down, and your opinion's in the comments section. But I encourage you to comment away anyway, and we'll see what happens here. Hopefully it doesn't get taken down. All right, guys, that's it for today. Please be sure to comment down below. Let me know what you think about this. And be sure to like the video, share with your friends, and subscribe. I'll catch you next time.